Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of domestic violence, childhood abuse, suicide attempt, wrongful imprisonment, mentions of murder and trauma, substance abuse, and prison violence. Our goal is to share real-life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well-being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion. Welcome back to Radiant Resilience, everyone. I am very excited for this conversation today. I think that we're going to get a perspective on a story that we've only heard about, but we've never actually talked to anybody about going through this. So I have with me today Judy Henderson. She is the author of When the Light Finds Us, a searing memoir about her 36-year journey from a wrongful murder conviction to freedom and redemption. Released in 2017 after spending over 3 decades in the Missouri prison system, Henderson emerged as one of the nation's most compelling voices for criminal justice reform and women's rights. While incarcerated, she transformed herself into a dedicated activist and fearless critic of systemic abuse, leading successful campaigns for legislation recognizing battered women syndrome as a legal defense. She also created pioneering programs helping incarcerated mothers maintain bonds with their children, earning broad respect among policymakers, attorneys, and fellow inmates. Today, Henderson continues her advocacy beyond prison walls, speaking on panels, giving media interviews, and meeting with legislators to provide insights only possible from her firsthand experience. She volunteers with groups supporting former inmates, reentry to society, and works at Catholic Charities. Though she lost decades of precious time, Henderson maintains a powerful spirit and demonstrates daily that no matter how broken the system, one courageous voice can still ignite reform. She lives in Missouri, surrounded by the loving family who never lost faith in her innocence. Welcome, Judy. That is quite the bio.
Thank you. Yes, I had to do something during those 36 years. We have a term in prison that either you do the time or the time does you.
Yeah. I had 0 experience in the prison system, but I can imagine if you're just locked up all day and you have, there's only so much you can do with your time. So
yes, and they assign you to a job, but for $8.50 a month, which a lot of people don't know, that's our big pay.
Wow.
But as far as staying busy, that's a lot of time left up to you. How do you want to do your time?
Yeah.
You can do it in a negative way, involved in all kinds of illegal activities and things that aren't maybe illegal, but they break the rules inside the prison. So I tried to stay very busy, and I did very well with that.
Yes, it seems like it. I'm very interested in this story, and I'm sure my listeners are as well. Obviously, you can read her book, which we will touch on a little bit more at the end, but I'm going to let you start wherever you feel like starting, Judy, on what you're willing to share with this journey, because I have so many questions, and it just seems so crazy. It's so much time, and yeah, so you go right ahead.
So I am the oldest of 8 children, actually 9, because I do have a stepsister, because we ended up having a wonderful stepfather that was very loving, unlike my biological which was abusive. Being the oldest of 8, you have a lot of responsibilities. You don't really get to really enjoy the childhood or the high school years. Plus, we were raised in a very strict Pentecostal family.
Okay.
So that made a big difference in what I could do and what I couldn't do. We had strict clothing, attire, and how we wore our hair. And I could not date till I was 18. And then I ended up marrying the first guy I ever went out with, and we had 2 children. Yeah, we had a daughter first, and then 9 months or 9 years later, I had my son.
Okay.
That long to be brave enough again.
I was just talking to a friend who just had a baby last August, and he was the difficult baby, and she was like, this has to get better because people do this again.
Yeah, that is so true. I couldn't
So,
believe mom did it 8 times. It's, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Boy, I'm
yeah.
glad she really did need a girl first.
Yeah.
But the marriage did not pan out to be what I was hoping it would be. We all have this dream of a beautiful home, a little white picket fence, and the children. And instead, it ended up being a very abusive marriage for 12 years. So I was brave enough finally to divorce him. And whenever I thought the violence was escalating to where it could possibly have a physical impact on the children, and I don't think he would have, but why would a mother take that chance? And that wasn't a healthy environment for children anyways, regardless of whether he would or would not have.
Yeah.
So I ended up in a psychiatric ward, and I divorced him in June, but he still wouldn't leave me alone. He'd come by and cut up my clothes, and I had to work. And so it was just too much stress, too much, and I couldn't deal with it.
Now,
So
were you sharing custody of the kids then?
no, I had weekends. There was a custody arrangement made because I had full custody, but he would get the kids maybe, I think, once or twice a month. I can't remember now. It's been so long.
That makes it just, I'm just asking because I feel like that makes it really hard to escape an abuser in those situations because
Yeah.
you have the shared children and you have to be in contact with them. So it's not as easy as not know where I moved to, where I'm working, anything like that, because the kid, he has rights to his children.
Oh,
So,
yes, he did have rights. So that did make it somewhat difficult, but
yeah.
yet I felt like he had the right to see his children because he was their father. And it was heartbreaking for me to take my son away from his dad because I
Mhm.
felt so strongly that boys needed their father. And I felt like I was depriving my son. But things turned out differently. My doctor suggested that I move out of town down where my family was. And so that was about 300 miles away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I did that. I moved down there, and actually, yeah, it was down there, down in Springfield, Missouri. And we stayed with them a month or two, and then I found a home and I found a job. I found a business that I purchased in
Oh,
February. Yeah, yeah. So that was great. My mother was an entrepreneur, and it just came natural in our family for me to do that. And so Tawny, it was like I was really super good in business
yeah.
and thrived on it. It was like that was my platform. And then, but whenever it came to relationships, it was like, what is wrong with me? And
Oh,
later, in years to come, I started my therapy once incarcerated, and I realized I had a love addiction.
oh, interesting.
Yes, there's drug addiction, alcohol addictions, gambling, but I had a love addiction. There wasn't anything I wouldn't do to please my partner and get them to love me. And I'm not saying illegal things,
Yep.
just, yeah, just, oh, you want this for dinner? Oh, you want me to crease your Levi's? You want me to starch the sheets or whatever it was. So I ended up having a great business and we were doing well. And then in April, some friends of mine from Springfield, we were out to dinner and I was introduced to my co-defendant.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was very suave, debonair, wore a three-piece suit, very educated.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, this is nice. And he was a real estate broker and he had been in the ministry at one time. So I thought, wow, he's all these nice things and has a good career. He's not lazy, he's ambitious.
Yeah.
So we started dating. And then in June, I came home from picking my son up at the nursery and came in my foyer and there were suitcases. And yeah, and that's what I did. I wonder
Yeah.
who is this? And my sister, one of my sisters was staying with me at the time. And so I just out loud said, whose suitcases are these?
Yeah.
And he came around the corner and he said, they're mine. I said, what are you doing? I said, why are you moving in my house? And he didn't ask, we didn't, it was never discussed, never mentioned. And he said, I just feel like that's important that I move in and take care of you and the children. He said, I think it's time. And I was already prone back then to not ask questions, a man, and just, oh, okay, was passive, very
Mm.
passive. And so I just voiced that I was not used to having men live in my house when I have with my children and I.
Sure.
And but he convinced me that this is what was needed. We wanted to become a family, and he was in the middle, had been separated for quite a while, and he was going to be getting a divorce in the process of it, he said. He moved in, and for a while we were doing good. I say for a while, a very short while, because I didn't know he was associated with other people that were shady and had a dark
Mm.
past. And
Well, the time frame, you said you met him in April and then he moved in July,
June.
June. Oh, yeah. So that was already very fast.
Yes, yes, everything was very fast. And then the murder happened in July.
Oh, wow. Oh, that was even faster.
Yes, yes. So here I was out of a 12-year abusive marriage in a psych ward, getting out, starting over, had no therapy, not on any medications. And my thinking was a battered woman's thinking sometimes gets rewired whenever you're abused. And you learn not to ask questions because you don't know if you're going to get hit for asking them. You don't inquire about certain behaviors. You just accept it as long as everything looks good on the surface. It's none of your business. But little did I know that he did have a horrible dark side, and somebody that he had known and that I guess he had dealings with at one point. He ended up committing a murder, and it was he's the one that committed the murder, and I happened to be present.
Okay.
I
At the
was
murder? Like
at
you
the
saw
murder.
it.
Yes, I saw
Oh
it.
my gosh. That's
Yes,
traumatizing in itself.
very.
Just
Yes,
before everything we're about to get into.
yes. And I was grazed by a bullet, but I felt like
Oh.
I hit because I fell backwards. And when I got up, because I had on dress and heels when this happened, and I felt something running, and it was blood running down my stomach. So, yes, that whole scene was like slow motion and something that you would see on television.
Mm.
It was so unbelievable to see somebody you thought you knew, which I didn't really know because I'd only known him since April. Geez, what was I
Yeah.
thinking?
Oh, he never gave you a reason not to trust him before that.
He
So,
didn't.
yeah.
No, he didn't. He was never jealous. I'm a very friendly person. I love people. My mother was a people person. We just gravitated toward people, and we loved helping people.
Yeah.
After the murder happened, then a hitman was sent to kill us because we
Gosh.
knew too much about what had happened.
How
And
long after the murder? Was that like real quick?
very quick.
Okay.
Yes, yes, within a week or two.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. You had to have been
Yeah.
living in fear for those
Oh, I
that week
was.
too.
I
Yeah.
was, because if he was capable of that, why wouldn't he be capable of killing me?
Yeah.
I had no idea that he had these capabilities. He was like the 4th of July, because the murder happened in the middle of July. We were at my aunt's house, and she and I were in her pool. And she said, Judy, why is he sitting up there reading a book on manipulation? To me, it was like, I explained to her, he's in the real estate business. He sells multi-million-dollar properties to large corporations and individuals. So I'm assuming it would have something to do with his job. And hindsight now, I think it was more than just that,
Oh, wow.
because he got me to talk about my past, about my ex-husband, about what I had been through. And he was very gingerly about it and very sweet and very kind and kept asking questions. And so I'm here to take care of you. Don't worry about that. And but little did I know what he did was set me up during the whole time planning what he was doing. And unbeknownst to me, it was going to end up in murder.
Wow. So you have a hitman sent after you.
Yes. And the only thing that saved my life, it was a miracle. I'm just going to call it out like it is. It was definitely a miracle. Because my mother, she drove a Cadillac, always wore dresses and heels. Like I said, she loved people, always trying to help them. And she would, after she would close her store, she would always go to like underneath bridges and the railroad tracks and take food and clothing to families and children. And that's just what she did. But she always had a picture, because I lived out of town. I lived in the Kansas City area and they lived in Springfield. She always had a picture of me up in her store. And it just so happened that this gentleman that was sent to kill us, when he walked in with a silencer on his gun and laid it on the table and told us why he was there, he looked at me and he said, "Are you daughter?"
Oh.
Yeah. And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Your mother has a picture of you hanging in her store." And he said, "Because of that, I'm not going to kill you today."
Wow.
And I said, "What?" He said, "Your mother, when me and my family came to that area, we had nothing. We were homeless. And your mother clothed us and gave us food." And I asked her who that picture was when we came into her store one time, and she said it was her daughter, which is you.
Wow.
And so who would have known, who would have thought what my mother did years before that,
Sure.
it would have any bearing on me living or dying?
Yeah.
I have to look back, and God always knows, I believe, I know he does, what's going to happen before we ever know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he has his way of protecting us that we have no idea about. But I can look back and see where that had to have been a miracle, or I would
Yeah.
not be sitting here today.
Yeah. Wow. So what
So,
happens next?
okay. So what happens next is we go to Alaska.
To run away?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He knows people in Alaska. I did not, of course, know anybody in Alaska. But he had a good friend up there that was also in the gold mine business with him in the Alaska area. And his girlfriend, the girlfriend of his friend, used to be my co-defendant's ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
So they were together up there, and I thought that was rather odd, but okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we go up there, and sure enough, he is aware that there is somebody after us. And so he gets a phone call asking if we're up there, and he says, "No, I haven't seen them." And so it was in July we went up there. We were arrested in December because while we were there, my co-defendant he started dealing in kilos of cocaine and quaaludes.
Wow. From Alaska?
Yeah. Oh, kid, you have no idea about Alaska.
I worked a summer in Denali National Park. That's about all I know.
Yeah. That's all you want to know.
That's crazy because I think we all think about drug dealers and drug issues coming from Mexico. So to think
Mhm.
like all the way up into Alaska, huh?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, I
Yeah.
learned something new so far.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad, because
Yeah.
don't go back to no,
No.
nothing against Alaska. I'm sure it's a pretty state if you're up there for the right reasons and
Yeah.
going to the right places.
Yeah.
But I just felt like any minute while I was there that I would be killed because I knew too much. I knew all of it. And so I had no identification. He took everything I had. I couldn't contact my family.
Oh
No
my
one.
gosh.
Of course, I would think that any minute I would be the next on the list.
Yeah.
So while I was up there, I attempted suicide again because I thought if I'm going to die, at least I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
But there is parts in the book that I hope everybody will read
Yeah.
about between Missouri and going to Alaska, what happened there.
Okay.
Because I wanted to be sure that my mother knew everything that happened. I
Okay.
wanted to write a note to my children because I really did not think that I would return. And so I wanted to say my last goodbyes in whatever way that I could. And
I'm so sorry you went through that.
yeah, that
That's
was
terrifying.
because I was very dedicated to my children.
Mhm.
I was there. My daughter was in dance, acrobats, gymnastics, you name it, and she was in it. And we had a busy life, barbecues, birthday parties. So for me, not to be able to be with my children was devastating in itself, very painful. But I ended up being life flighted to two different hospitals, and evidently, I did survive. I'm here. I thought, okay, here I am again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were arrested in December. But
Okay.
yeah, my co-defendant, he was livid because I drew attention to us, and he choked me till there was prints all over my neck, and he had to buy turtlenecks for me to be able to even go out in public.
Oh my
And so,
gosh.
yeah, so I never did that again. So he did have a very evil, mean side to him.
Ugh.
But we did end up getting arrested and we came back to Missouri on Christmas Eve, which I was smiling whenever the cameras were on us because I was so happy to be on Missouri land,
Yeah.
back where my family was. And so, of course, we went straight to jail, and we had one attorney representing both of us.
Okay. Was that his idea?
Yeah, kind of. I happen to know this attorney, but
Okay.
I didn't know that he would also use this attorney
Okay.
because at one point I worked for the court administrator in the
Hmm.
Kansas City court administrator's office in Jackson County. And so this attorney had come in and out before, and I'd known him. Plus, I knew his secretary was a friend of mine. But yes, my co-defendant did want to use the same attorney. And so now I know hindsight, so he could listen to our strategies. So he would know if I was giving up information that would harm him.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes. And little did I thought he was doing it because he loved me, cared about me. He was trying to be protective. And he told me, always said, don't worry about it. You didn't do the murder. You'll be fine. Don't say a word. And of course, the attorney wouldn't allow me to take the stand because
Mm.
it would hurt his other client, which was my co-defendant.
Oh my gosh. That seems like something wrong in the system, I'm assuming,
Yes,
because the fact that they allowed that, I don't know.
yes.
That seems, I know you both were there, but I feel like it should have been two separate trials, probably.
You're correct.
Mhm.
You are so correct because it was a serious constitutional conflict of interest. My rights were tarnished because I did not have the right to a legal defense to the best of the Constitution's ability. And that attorney knew, but he was getting paid from both sides. So he didn't want to lose another client. He said, the only thing he said, you need to come up with an alibi testimony.
Okay.
I said, what do you mean? He said, just take the stand, say that you were with your mother shopping and you weren't at the scene, you weren't there, you weren't present. And I said, I can't do that. I would never implicate my family, never implicate my mother. And plus, I would not put my hand on the Bible and swear to tell the truth. I
Mm,
knew it wasn't the truth.
yeah.
And he said, then you won't be able to testify in your defense.
Eh,
So I didn't.
just because you didn't do what he told you to do?
Yes,
Oh, for goodness sakes.
yes, because it would hurt his other client.
Jeez.
Yeah. But I did not know until after the fact that my co-defendant was seeing two other criminal attorneys on the side. Yes, until after I was convicted. And then he fired that attorney and hired the other two attorneys.
To get him out of it?
And they did.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
Yes,
so you
and they
go
did.
through this whole trial. How long was it?
The trial was, I think it was about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, something like
Okay.
that, for
Okay.
trial prep and trial actual time in the jury room. So whenever I was found guilty of capital murder, and that carries either life without parole for 50 years or the death penalty.
Wow.
So once you're found guilty by the jury, then the judge instructs the jury to go back out and decide which sentence I should receive.
Oh, good
So,
Lord. You've just
yeah,
been living 6 months or more of fearing for your life.
yes. Yes.
Ugh.
And now I was facing the death penalty. The
And
process.
you didn't get to speak very much during that trial
No.
then,
Oh
at
no,
all?
not at all.
Wow.
At all.
Okay.
It was all mitigating circumstances. There was no physical evidence that I was there,
Mm,
but my co-defendant ensured that I was framed for it because I had a silver Thunderbird with my turn license plates and
mhm.
then, and so they connected that to the crime.
Okay.
And but little did I know I didn't know that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that his plan was to frame me and
Yeah.
never see him. And but the prosecutor knew the entire time that Greg was my co-defendant was guilty. He knew he did the murder because he had somebody that turned state's evidence, which was one of the people that was friends of his on the dark side that owned a bonding company, tell him that Greg, my co-defendant, went to him and said, here's what I did. Here, I need your help. I need to move the body. Yes. And he was also implicated in the crime himself. The one
Yeah.
ended up
But he
being
was the prosecutor? Is that?
the prosecutor used that witness,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, the witness that Greg had confessed to him this information. What the witness failed to say is that he himself is the one that sent a hitman to kill us.
Oh,
That
dear Lord.
he was part of the scheme of
But
this whole
God
thing.
forbid he implicate himself.
Exactly.
Oh
Exactly. Yes.
my
Plus,
gosh.
whenever I was found guilty, like I would have been executed, Tawny, at between 18 and 20 years. I would have already been executed. And I wouldn't be sitting here today had I received the death penalty. So it was by the grace of God that I received life without parole for 50 years.
How old were you at this point, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I was 31 when it
Oh my
happened.
gosh, you were so young. Not that it matters, but
Oh, I know.
this whole experience is going to be traumatizing no matter what age you're at. But
Yes.
31 going through all that. And
Yeah.
then you were forced to just sit there and watch all of these people just incriminate you, basically.
Right. Yes.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
And years later, since then, especially since I've been home, I've had reporters talk to me and they've seen me in the Capitol sitting in the state representative's offices. And one of them walked in and she said, Judy, is that you, Judy Henderson? And I said, yes. And I didn't know who she was. And she said, oh my God. She said, we are so happy you are home. I said, and you're who? And so she told me that she was a reporter and that I was so gracious about giving her and another TV reporter an interview down in the
Mhm,
prison whenever I
mhm.
was incarcerated. And she said, we'll never forget that. She said,
Mhm.
the whole town of Springfield was upset and just so sad because you were convicted because we know you did not do this. We knew that you were being railroaded.
I am
And
just frequently surprised at our justice system. I'm not gonna lie. I've watched some of the documentaries out there too, where I recently watched one about a couple where she went missing and was kidnapped, and then they blamed him, but he absolutely didn't do it. And then they eventually connected it to this other crime. But I'm just like, or I'm in Colorado, the whole Jean Benet Ramsey situation. Like,
oh,
I am
yes,
just
yes,
constantly amazed at how
yes.
awful our justice system is, because you
I
think it's
know.
just like the movies where people, like, you present the evidence and people, it finds the truth, but it's
Yeah.
corrupt.
It is. And the great thing about this, though, is the prosecutor was running for chief prosecutor at the time. It was an election year.
Mm.
So this was high profile, there a lot of publicity. And but years later, after I'd done 20, 22, maybe 23 years, I can't really remember, I wrote the prosecutor a letter.
Mhm.
And because I wanted him to know that I no longer held any animosity toward him for doing a
Oh.
job that he was elected to do. I said, I just want you to know what I've done through the years and how my family's doing. And I would send him a letter like around Christmas time each year, just to update him on other things. And he ended up, Tawny, being one of my biggest advocates to bring me.
Oh, that's amazing.
He said, and I met with him afterwards, which was, ooh, just really crazy. We met at a coffee shop and had coffee, and he said, and he told the governor's office, he said, the only case I've ever had nightmares about is hers.
Oh,
He
wow.
said, I would like for her to come home. She needs to come home. And I thought, wow. And he told me that he didn't know, because by then he was the chief justice on the bench. He was a
Mm,
judge now. And he did not know how his peers would look at him, step up and do something like this.
yeah.
And he said, whenever he did it, he said they were all just saying that you did the right thing. That took a
Oh,
lot of courage to step up and admit that she should not be in prison.
wow.
Yeah, so that was nice. And he said, and besides that, my wife Donna was going to divorce me if I did not get you out of prison.
Take that.
I know, of course, a woman behind it.
Yes. Okay, so you get 50 to life parole. Did your co-defendant get anything at that point in time or no?
No, what he did do, no, not at that time. He actually put a contract out on me whenever I went to prison.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And it was somebody that we had both, she had been in the county jail with me, and she was a career criminal. She had been in and out of the system and a drug addict. And she took the contract and she befriended me whenever she did end up coming back to prison. But then another offender let me know my first year there, because whenever they dropped me off there, it was like a different world.
Sure.
Um,
You weren't a criminal, so it's not like you'd already been in and out of jail and knew what to expect. And I'm
no,
assuming you went to a pretty high profile prison
high security
or
prison.
high security, yeah.
Yes. And so it was scary to begin with. I didn't understand any of the language. I didn't understand the rules, the policies. Why is that a rule? Why can't I do this or why can't I do that? Why can I only have 6 bottoms and 12 tops? Why do I can only have 3 pair of shoes?
Yeah.
And the rules were, it was just like being dropped into a foreign land. Even the
Yeah.
language was different. And then when they put the contract on me, I didn't know how to be in prison. I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Sure.
How was I supposed to relate to these women? How was I going to fit in this world?
Especially when you're at that point in time, you're like, okay, I'm gonna be here a long time,
And that's what they kept telling me, Judy, you need to adjust because you're going to die here.
Oh,
And they wanted me to know you are here for us to break you down and build you back up. And
oh,
I thought, how can I be any more broken than what I already am?
right. After
Mm.
everything you've gone through.
Yeah, yeah. And I had a captain one time, a big, burly female, come up to me and put her forearm against my throat and take me to the wall and said, if I had my way with you, I would take away your makeup and put a prison dress on you. And then she just walked away. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. I don't know how
Oh,
I'm going to do this. But so whenever I found out about the contract, then I had to take this into my own hands because this was life or death now.
yeah,
I didn't know how to make a name for myself in there. I didn't know how to get respect from inmates because everybody said you have to earn your respect. You have to get your respect. So I did speak with another lifer and I told him I'm going to speak with this individual in the bathroom. Don't let anybody in.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
So
you were gonna confront this girl.
yes, yes.
Okay, that's ballsy. Good job.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Kid, it was either me or her.
I suppose when you're facing that, you got to make some moves for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Because you never know because she was
Yeah.
known for carrying a shank anyways.
Mm,
So I had to do what needed to be done for it to be on my terms and not her terms.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you meet her in the bathroom and how'd that go?
I won. I
Yes.
won. Thank God I won.
Did you guys like just was it like a brawl or
It
was
was
it words? Was it?
no, we had a long bench that sat in front of these shower stalls.
Okay.
And on one side of the wall, then on the other side was the stools and a washer and dryer. And then on one end was sinks and mirrors. And it was a pretty good sized bathroom. And so I went in and I asked her, I said, hey, have a seat. I want to yell at you a minute. And so I set her on my left side because I'm right-handed.
Okay.
So I used the moves that my ex-husband used to use on me.
Oh, wow.
He taught me how to fight. Yes. So I was talking to her, and I knew when his arms opened up like this and he
Mm,
started shaking his hands up and down, he was going to come back with a right. And
okay.
so I told her, I said, Pam, I heard some stuff and I just wanted to talk to you about it. And then I just opened my hands, came back with the right, and just knocked her off the bench. And when I did, I stood up and ran around the bench real well, actually, I hopped over it and kicked her as hard as I could over on her stomach. And then I backed off and she came up and had a shank in her hand.
Oh,
And
gosh.
yeah, she had pulled it from underneath, her body, and I assume she had it in her bra. And she came up, and so I just backed away to see where she was going to try to hit me with it. And I ended up grabbing both wrists and knocking her over toward the washer and dryer and knocked it out of her hand. And about that time, all the officers came running, the goon squad, and the inmate that was holding Bus at the door, they came in and grabbed the shank and got rid of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so then we went to the hole and they transferred her to another prison out of state, and she
Mm.
ended up slicing another offender's face up.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know why I'm surprised. I should know from movies and stuff that prison is not a pleasant place, but you put a whole bunch of unpleasant humans together and
Yes.
yeah, but
Right.
still it's like
Yeah,
crazy.
it is. And then there's a point where through the years that they closed all the state mental hospitals here.
Mm.
So they didn't have any place else to put people.
Oh, wow.
And so if they committed some form of crime, they wouldn't send them to the mental hospital, they'd send them to prison.
Yeah.
So we had all kinds of different personalities. We had different cases that were just heinous. We had somebody that cooked their baby in a microwave. We had,
Jesus.
yes, the crimes were unbelievable.
Wow.
So you had to really pay attention, and you had to learn body language. You had
Mm.
to learn to read lips. You had to learn how to watch their mannerisms, how they moved. And they always say offenders they like their back up against the wall.
Mm.
Of course, because that way you can see who's coming at you. The lifestyle there is totally different than what it is out here. But I did earn my respect that day.
Good job.
Yeah, I know. They said, Judy, one thing you need to know is they take kindness for weakness. But I thought,
Mhm.
I don't know how to be mean.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know how to do that.
But you're
And
scrappy. You've got a scrappy side.
yeah, I do. Yes, I do. And I always got up every morning, Tawny, because it was a piece of me that I could bring with me that they could not take. They took my name and gave me a number. I was just a number. They took my children that I didn't have any say so over. And all I had was how I conducted myself and my appearance.
Mhm.
So I would always take good care of myself. I always put on makeup. I did my hair. And that wasn't well received until they realized this is how she is. Said, this is how I am on the street. The same thing.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want to take care of myself?
Yeah.
And then I ended up helping a lot of other girls take care of themselves.
That's cool.
Yeah, it all ended up really good in those areas. But it was a lot of a big learning curve, a huge learning curve. And then my
Sure.
co-defendant, before he went to trial, he saw that the contract didn't work, so he was still concerned that I would go back and testify against him because he was still waiting trial.
Yeah.
And so he had his attorneys, they contacted, I don't know who contacted the offenders, but they chose 4 offenders where I was doing time at to come and talk to them about being his alibi witness.
Oh,
And
wow.
and to say that I told each of them that I committed the murder, I set it up, I killed the victim, and he had nothing to do with it. Yes, 4 inmates, and I had sworn affidavits in my file that I sent to the governor's office where they came back to prison because they were career criminals. So they came back and they were concerned that I knew about this. So this was years later. They came back and they decided they wanted to check in PC, protective custody, because they didn't want me to do anything to harm them. Yeah. And I didn't even know anything about it.
Yeah.
I knew that Greg was going to try, and
Mhm.
I didn't know who the offenders were that were coming back to testify. I never knew that. They were somebody. And because he ended up not using them, even though the attorneys promised them early parole, they promised them commissary the whole time they were incarcerated. And he gave two of them, I think the attorneys gave them each, two of them $2,500 that was sent to their families.
Okay.
And but he ended up being acquitted. He was able to address the jury, which was all female.
Mm.
And defendant addressing their own jury is very unheard of. That's just something that is not common.
Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah, his attorneys, I don't know how they finagled it, but they did.
Wow.
And he paid a bartender to say that he was there at the Sheraton at the bar when this crime occurred, and that I walked in with blood all over my dress and admitted that I shot and killed the victim.
Oh my
And
God.
anybody, I don't care who it is, anybody that knows me knows I would never, never do anything like that.
Yeah.
Let alone walk in a public place with blood all over me. That's
Well,
not
and
a,
presumably, if that was the case, there would have been witnesses to that, and that was never
exactly.
part of the story.
No,
Oh my
exactly.
gosh.
Exactly. He did such a good job. He had all of his ducks in a row whenever it came to his trial.
Because he watched yours happen. So then he had all these ways to pin it on you, and you were already in jail.
Yes, yes. So he ended up being acquitted
Wow.
of all murder charges. And then I understand some family and friends saw him and a lot of other gentlemen celebrating at a black tie dinner,
Oh my
in a
gosh.
nice private club where they were celebrating his freedom.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was tough. That was tough. But then, like I said, years later, a lieutenant came to me and he said, Judy, I've got some information for you. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we've got somebody that just came back to prison that has told us a story. And he said, I think this is going to help you with your case.
Hmm.
And he said, but you have to promise me. He said, I've talked to one of the caseworkers and we've thought of a way that it could help you if we could get them to sign an affidavit and have it notarized to these facts and give it to you and to your attorneys. He said, but you have to promise me when I put you two in the room, you will not jump across that table and do anything to her. I
You're like,
said,
I ain't promising nothing after all.
you're right. But so I did. I got two affidavits out of the four. The other two would not give me one,
Mm.
but I did get those two. And so that's in the book.
How long were you in the prison before you started trying to get out and
Oh, I was in the
go back to
prison
trial?
my first year. I started getting out. I
Okay.
started working on it immediately
Yeah.
because I'll tell you, I was so angry. I've never been that angry. And it was time I got angry about all the things that had happened to me in
Mhm.
my life. But I decided, you know what? There's two things you can do with anger. You can get bitter or you can get better.
Mm.
And I chose to get better. So I had to start with how did I get here? What led me here?
Mm.
So I started out with therapy.
Okay.
And that's when I learned the term the battered woman
Mm.
syndrome. And I thought, I'm not a battered woman. I'd never heard that term before. And domestic violence and all those terms. Having disagreements or getting beat up by your husband was just something that was the norm back then. And police didn't get involved. Nobody got involved in it. And they didn't have groups and psychiatrists or psychologists to help you with something like that. It was just the way things were.
Yeah.
But now things were starting to get different. And so I ended up doing some pretty intense therapy and for adults who molested as children, because that's also in my background. So I had to get rid of all this stuff.
Mm.
that was keeping me a victim because I was tired of being a victim. I wasn't going to be anyone's victim ever again. And besides, the anger didn't hurt or harm anyone but myself. It wasn't productive for me. It wasn't
Yeah.
taking me to better places. And so I changed my way of thinking. I got the therapy. I did the hard work.
Mm.
And I started doing any kind of education that they offered. Then they had Pell Grants, so I started college classes. I became a paralegal.
Okay.
Yeah, a certified paralegal. I had to understand the law because that's what got me there. So I had to figure out how am I going to be free? But I knew I would be. I always knew I would
Mm.
be. I don't care how long it took. Then I started working on other women's cases. I looked around, there was other women, and I had to learn how to be a mother behind bars because that was probably the hardest thing. The anger and the deep love I had for my children and my family
Mhm.
is what motivated me
Yeah.
and caused me not to give up because I had 5 lifer friends there that escaped. And they said,
They
Judy,
escaped or they
escaped. No,
like
they
climbed
escaped.
the walls and escaped.
They escaped. They went through the walls and escaped. And
Wow.
one stayed gone for 5 years and was on America's Most Wanted. And she ended up having a baby, her first child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. She's home now. She just got home a couple years ago. But that was something those thoughts never ran through my head because I would still not get to see my family and my children. I couldn't do that. I could not. What happened was already devastating for them.
Yeah. How
And
old were your kids at that time when you went into prison?
Angel just turned 13 and my son was 3.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
not quite 4 yet. And my daughter always came to visit. My family made sure she came to visit. And we remained very close. I taught her how to cook over the phone. We talked about relationships and the heartbreaks, and we talked about everything from A to C and
Hmm.
ended up being the best of friends.
Hmm. Good.
Still are to this day. I only live like 10 minutes from her.
Nice.
Yes. And we've been able to make a lot of good memories together, even though we had a lot of years where we were apart. She had 2 children, my grandchildren, and they were born coming to visit me in prison.
Oh, wow.
That's how they knew me. But it's not that way today. I'm very
Yes.
close with them too. But I looked around and I saw other women that did not know how to be mothers, Tawny. It was very heart-wrenching for them not to know how to communicate with their children. And there was a lot of battered women that needed serious help.
Was
Um,
therapy an option in there? Just you had to take it or not take it, or was everybody forced to do it, or?
No, it was an option.
Okay.
It was an option, and not very many would take it. A lot of them didn't. They just, let's do the time and get me out of here, that kind of thing. And the career criminals would look at it as like a vacation. Okay, hi, old school buddies, and I'm back, old home week.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this cannot be the only life they know. But a lot of them, it was the only life they knew.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very sad. And then when we started a battered women's group and we talked about how there wasn't any defense for battered women that killed their
Mhm.
abusers. So we had the first legislative hearing inside a prison with senators and representatives. And we helped create the battered women syndrome defense.
Okay.
And that became a law in the state of Missouri. So they would have a defense to use when they went to trial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was very important.
So
That,
some of those women that you were with in there were in there because they killed their abusers?
yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Defended themselves. But they had the same sentences I had. I'm not saying they should go free for their actions, but I'm saying they shouldn't be put away forever
Yeah.
for defending themselves from somebody that was just beating them almost to death.
I
You know,
watched that docu-series on is it the Mendez brothers or
Mendez's.
whatever? And I watched it and then I was telling my husband about it and he was like, how many people actually get to kill their abusers? I get that. But it's such a conflicting thing in my brain too, because I see what you're saying. If these women
Mhm.
actually finally took a stance and were able to defend themselves, and that may have been the only way they would get out of that, right? Because the
Yes.
person could chase them down. Heck, you were in prison and he was still sending people to try to kill you. And then to get life in prison, yeah, I don't know. It is so hard. I want to believe the justice system would take care of those people, but they probably won't.
No, they don't.
So these women have to advocate for themselves, and oh man,
Yes, they do.
crazy.
I mean,
Interesting.
especially when they're in the heat of getting beat and they are like an inch away from that happening, them losing their life. Why shouldn't they fight back and do whatever necessary to ensure that the mother of their children is alive?
Yeah.
You know, they didn't choose to get beat. They didn't choose for him to hit them.
Yeah.
So they needed a defense. They needed somebody to hear the mitigating
Mm.
circumstances of what led to that action.
So has that changed a lot then since?
It has changed.
Okay.
It has changed. Yes, the sentences aren't as quite as harsh as they were at one time because they would get life sentences and life without parole for 50 years. And so that has changed to a degree. There's still women in prison that I fight for to come home
Mm.
that should not be there. But we're still trudging away, and I'm still meeting with legislators. And one of the governors that just left office after 2 terms in January, he did commute the sentence of a friend of mine that did 38 years.
Wow.
Yes, and so she finally came home. And I did clemencies and worked on clemencies for a lot of the women that came home before I did.
Yeah.
But I was the only one that got the relief that I received. And but we, like I said, we started the different programs for mothers and their children, which are still alive and well to this day. And the women are utilizing those and becoming better parents, better mothers. And the generational curse of families keep going to prison, that has been broken in some of their families.
Nice.
So I'm very proud of a lot of the work that I did all those years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting you were able to do a lot of that work. I think it's interesting they let you become a paralegal while you were in prison. That's
I know.
also a funny concept to me. Awesome for you.
Yes,
You, some cases, the only way you would be able to advocate for yourself is knowing more about the law. So,
yes.
but you could see some inmates maybe trying to manipulate the law into different
Sure.
ways and getting out
Yes,
when they shouldn't be and whatever. But that's really cool
right.
that they let you do that. I think
Yes,
and you did good with it. So that's
I
amazing.
did. And not only that, they did get some of the grants back so offenders can continue their education presently. It's
Mhm.
through private scholarships.
Okay.
It's not through the federal government or state government grants. It's actually private scholarships that they're given to offenders. So that's something because whenever I was in, I couldn't even take computer classes
Mm,
when the technology started to learn anything about it. So I came home knowing absolutely nothing.
mm.
So weird out here.
After your 36 years?
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
bet that adjustment was real weird.
Oh, it was. I didn't know there was like 101 ways to flush a stool and to wash your hands. In the bathrooms, I thought, what is this? Where do I push a button? Do I move?
Oh,
I
yeah.
do.
Yeah, simple things that the rest of us probably take for granted. And
Yeah, there's so much that people take for granted out here
Mhm.
that I'm like, wow, people really don't appreciate things out here very much.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of that is perspective, right?
Yeah.
It's based on
Mhm.
what we've been through in our lives. And
Right.
so I want to back up just a little bit.
Sure.
Why did it take 36 years? If you started, just because I'm ignorant to all of this, but
No.
so you started a year into your sentence, and why did it end up taking 36 years?
Because most attorneys, for one, do not know how to put clemency packets together,
Ah,
how to do a clemency brief. It's not taught in law schools. So when I came home, I spoke at a law school and did a roundtable with law students and explained the clemency process to them. You learn it by trial and error, and a lot of it is politics.
and so briefly, can you tell us what a clemency is? I don't know.
Yes, a clemency is you can get the form from your parole board. Just request a clemency form, and it's very one page, very elementary, very easy to fill out. But that is the easy part. The part that you need to submit with that is mitigating circumstances that happen around the crime, things that did not come out in your trial that should have. You have to be very transparent about your entire life.
Mm,
You have to make them get to know you on paper. You need them to feel what you've been going through.
yeah.
You need them to understand your supporters, that you have all these supporters. You need letters from supporters. You need letters from politicians. So you have to do a lot of work to connect with all of these people.
That all takes time, and not all of them will probably meet with you when you're in prison like that.
But I did have legislators actually come to the prison whenever I would craft different bills and try to get them to sponsor them, like a long timers bill for the elderly. Whenever they've done 65 years, have the pro board see them, what their pro plan looks like, where they're at mentally,
Mm.
what they've done since their incarceration. You also have to put all of this stuff in the clemency packet. Anything that transpired before you came to prison. I had a traffic ticket where I ran it. I say it was a yellow light. They say it was a red light.
But how many of us run yellow lights and red lights? I actually just recently did that on accident.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was the one ticket that they knew I had gotten, and I forgot to mention it. But
Oh,
that's how they know. So don't try to cover up or make excuses. Take responsibility for whatever actions you paid or you played in anything that occurred in your life. Let them know that you've been rehabilitated, you've done all the hard work, you've done all the therapy. Your packet has to be full of everything that you can think of, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I'm curious because wouldn't all of this information be helpful at a trial before
Yeah.
you end up in jail?
Yes, they should be
Figuring
doing
out whether or not you are an actual criminal, like
correct.
instead of, it's interesting to me that this is like an after the fact kind of
It is.
situation when that all seems like it would have been relevant into going into your trial, especially a murder trial like that. That's such a big deal.
Yes.
They didn't get to know their defendants.
You're right. That's a very good observation, Tawny, because there is pre-sentence investigations done before you're sentenced, not before you go to trial, though.
Okay.
So they need to do all of this, but a lot of them it's through the pro board, and they will come in and do these pre-sentence investigations, but they don't do a thorough job because they're
Mhm.
overloaded, they're underpaid, overworked,
Mhm.
and they don't have the manpower to do the job that needs to be done.
Mm.
So it's sad that they don't do it ahead of time because a lot of these incidents, a lot of these lifers that get these kinds of sentence are first-time offenders, never committed any crime ever before in their life.
That's
That's most of your
interesting.
lifers, especially the women.
Yeah.
And then to take them from their families, from their children, and then the children get thrown into the foster system.
Mm.
So there you are, you're costing, the state is even paying more money. They're paying tons of millions of dollars to incarcerate you. Now they're paying millions of dollars to take your children and put them in foster care,
Yeah.
causing more trauma to those babies and
That
not
they'll
paying
have to probably
attention.
pay for therapy for later.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You're
Oh,
right.
wow.
You're right. So it's a vicious circle. But yeah, so it takes a lot of work. And sometimes we're getting so backlogged in incarcerating people. It's
Now
just
they're sending people to El Salvador, so it's not our problem anymore.
yeah, yeah. Isn't that
Just
crazy?
send them there because then
Yeah,
they can deal with them.
yeah, yeah. I know. I know.
Oh man. Just quick question for my own curiosity. Were your kids then while you were in prison, were they with their dad or were they with a family member of yours?
No, whenever I became incarcerated, then they automatically went with their father.
Okay. Was
And
that tough for you?
it was hard, but I gave him ownership of the house, the vehicles, the travel trailer, everything that I owned that I got in the divorce, I gave it all back to him because my daughter, she grew up in that neighborhood where we were at. Because when I left and moved down by my parents, I told him he could have the house, he
Okay.
could live in it. And so my daughter was good being there around all of her friends, and the neighbors knew her. They grew up with her since she was, because we had the home built there when she was just a baby.
Yeah.
So she was very familiar with the school district, but whenever she went away to college, then she went down to my parents.
Okay.
And that's where she ended up in college, and then graduated summa cum laude at UMKC here in Kansas City.
Amazing.
Now she's the executive director of Mother's Refuge, which is a home for pregnant mothers and their babies.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And she fought hard for me during my incarceration and would go visit the governor's office and meet with them. And she was one of my biggest advocates.
Amazing. So you spend 36 years, you finally get out. We've already touched a little bit on the shocking culture shock. How long have you been out now?
Okay, I got released on December 20th, 2017.
Oh, that's right. It was in your bio.
Yeah, so the 8 years this December. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have a whole new take on freedom, for one.
And then COVID hit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Those fun years we always talk about.
Yes, that you could not go out anywhere. You couldn't do this. And I thought,
yeah, now you're back in prison.
Yeah, that's what I felt.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, nobody is going to tell me I cannot go to the store. No, I'm not going to take it. And I was living with my daughter and son-in-law then, and they said, now, Mom, you cannot go out. You cannot go to the store. And I thought, this does not sit very well with me. So, Tawny, what I did is I did go to the store, not thinking. I ended up buying stuff to put in the refrigerator that wasn't there that morning.
Okay.
There when my daughter came home from the office that afternoon.
Oh.
So I wasn't a very good criminal, evidently. She said, Mom, have you been to the store? I said, why do you ask that, Angel? And she said, because we didn't have this stuff in the refrigerator.
You were hoping she didn't notice.
Yeah. So she was so busy with her position and everything that she just wouldn't even let it be a thing.
Yeah.
It was a thing. But yeah, so when the governor came to release me, he himself personally came.
Wow.
First time in the history of Missouri that a governor's ever came to a prison. First time in the history of Missouri that a governor has released an offender immediately the same day. And first time in the history of Missouri that a governor has given a lifer a pardon.
Oh, amazing.
Yes. So I was totally exonerated, and it was a day to remember. My sister had promised me years before this, probably when I did 10 years. Whenever you come home, because my family never gave up either. They were very supportive, came to visit, very loving. I lost my mother and stepfather and 3 brothers while I was incarcerated, which was hard.
Yes.
But she promised that she would have a black long stretch limo waiting for me when I came home. And I had forgotten all about it.
Sure, 36 years later.
Yeah, who would have thought about that?
Yeah.
So I walked out and I saw it and I just broke down and started bawling. But there's a video of us on the website that people can go to and see my day of walking out of prison.
Yeah.
And all the staff that was out there wishing me well and telling me bye. And I had one caseworker that told me she said, I am not going to retire until I know you're home because I know you did not do this. I was released in December. She retired in July.
Oh, amazing. Big question.
Yes.
Did the co-defender ever get caught and go to jail?
He did not.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes, he was acquitted. And of course, you can't be tried twice for the same crime. Yeah.
So once you were out, they couldn't reopen the case and have you as a witness instead of.
No.
Oh My gosh. Did you have any issues when you did get out that he was maybe worried and sent people after you or?
Oh, yes, I thought about that because it was broadcast, it was public, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of news media around my release. So he knew I was, I'm sure, out. But that same caseworker I talked about, she had made sure that I had a picture of him at the age he was now. And so I would know what he looked like if I did see him anywhere near me in the vicinity. But he actually passed away a year and a half or 2 years ago of COVID. Yeah. He did end up going to prison, federal prison, for 4 years for selling a kilo of cocaine for $250,000 to an undercover FBI agent.
Wow. But 4 years compared to
Yeah.
he should have been the one in for life.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
He continued his career criminal activity till, I don't know, till the day he died. I'm
the
not
end.
sure.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I don't know. But
Does that bring you? This is very personal, but does it bring you a little bit of peace that you don't have to worry about that factor
it
anymore?
it does, it actually does, that I don't have to look over my shoulder and worry about him sending somebody after me
Yeah.
or anything happening there, and my family's safe. And so yeah, it
Oh,
is.
man. You have led a crazy life,
I
but
I have.
I very much admire everything that you have done in the process of it all because you could have let it all beat you down and break you down and readjusting to getting back out into the world too. I'm sure that took its toll as well and you had to work through that. So I admire you. I think you're a
Thank
beautiful
you,
soul
Tawny.
for everything you've been through.
Thank you so much. I just want everybody to know that whenever you're faced with what you think is the darkest thing that's ever happened in your life, that's when, I don't know, something happens inside of you and you realize you were born with all the tools that you need to get you where you want to go into such a better place. I believe that God created us for a purpose. And I was able and blessed to be able to find my purpose in the work that I do today.
Of course, you would rather not have been wrongfully accused by a murder and not gone to prison for 36 years, but the amount of good that you did and learned and the women that you've helped and everything, I like to think that was all for a reason. So,
It was. And in hindsight, I look back and I see where God put people in my life and He took people out of my life.
even your children's dad who taught you how to punch the lady in the face.
Exactly. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Yes.
Life
Yeah.
is so interesting to me. So, you have a book. It's called When the Light Finds Us. And where can people find that book?
They can find that book at all bookstores. It's on Amazon presently, pre-order. It does launch on April the
Oh,
15th.
okay. I didn't even know it wasn't launched yet. Okay.
Yes, it will get launched on April the 15th. So we'll be doing a big launch event in New York City on that day. I have a website at judyhenderson.com. You're
Okay.
more than welcome to go there. You'll see all kinds of information and ways to reach out to me, and pictures and other information that you might find interesting. So please feel free to get the book. There's a lot more in the book 36 years that I did not mention about prison and different things that happened along the way.
And if somebody wants to get involved in what you're doing and the activism that you're doing and everything, is it best to just go to your website?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they're more than welcome to do that. I
All
would
right.
love that. We
We
all
will.
to do something. Yes.
Yes, yes, we will. I will link all of that in the show notes. Do you have any parting words for my listeners after this amazing conversation?
Oh, thank you, Tawny. I am so grateful that you had me on. And I want all the listeners to know that if you haven't found your purpose in life, please try to find it, because you were created for something very special. And you have special gifts that maybe you've not even tapped into yet. But one of the best things you could do is to give back.
That's
And
great.
that will bring you more blessings than what you could ever imagine.
Mm.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on and being brave enough to share your whole story too. I know there was probably at times safety issues with that, but I'm so glad you've been able to share it and help others. And I really admire you. So thank you so much, Judy, for coming on here. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Tawny, and you have a great rest of your day. And thank you so much for having me and
Thank
your
you.
audience. I want to just send you love and blessings. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode.